Hello and welcome back around the bonfire. It is the show just telling everybody to chill out a little bit, guys. Okay, we got the plastic cup out of the way. Now we get to focus on the real American soccer identity that is the league's cup. It's John and Tim back, another episode. That was a joke. I hope nobody actually takes me seriously on that one. Tim, how you doing?
Good. That intro seemed highly targeted to relax and I don't know who it was sent to, but I'm not going to lie. So look, I don't love the League's Cup in a lot of ways. The soccer itself has been fun to watch, right? Mm-hmm. So that, but Greg Berhalter versus teams from Mexico is content I am just up for. So I'm kind of glad we get to see that. And we get to see that at the glorious Parthenon temple, the just temple to the sport that is SeatGeek Stadium. So I can't wait.
There was something a little magical about that. I don't know. I walked in seeing the Vamos on the empty stands because it was only 3,600 people there. It's a crappy night in Bridgeview. There was something there. There's something a little special about that. I don't know. Maybe I'm on my own on that one. It was kind of nice to be back.
So every time I walk into SeatGeek, you kind of go to get to the press box early. You sort of cut right behind the goal away from Section 8 and the supporters. And so that opposite goal, you kind of go along that side and you kind of get right up to the pitch and it just, you smell the grass and stuff like that in a way that you don't at Soldier Field, because unless you're actually on the pitch, it's a good 25 feet away from you. And yeah, look, it's nice to see. Now, having said that, there were then pigeons that were literally flying in the press box within a foot or so of our heads several times, including when you're trying to cover the match. So, I mean, I may get, dude, there's a germaphobe that I will not name in the Fire press corps. And they made the mistake of looking up what diseases being around a place that pigeons have been living and shitting and all of that can do for you. And let's just say that was not a happy choice on that person's.
You're going to make Austin bleep out and shitting.
I didn't say the P one. I just said living and roosting or something like that.
I don't think you definitely didn't say roosting. But
no, I did say the second one. I don't know why you're saying it again because it's just more work for him to do.
Okay,
but I said the second one, but it's technically not that because it's some combo thing with birds, which I had to learn in science class.
Speaking of shit, since we're already deep in this, let's talk the game that was. It was a Wednesday night Open Cup clash between a team that should win and a team that should lose, and you're never going to guess what happened. The opposite. St. Louis City emerging victorious, a 2-1 win against the mighty Chicago Fire. I felt like a little bit more of the same we've already seen from the Fire this year. Tim, you made the comment before we got on. It does feel like the Fire have only beaten themselves. They haven't really been beat this year. We'll talk about that later on. Just a quick recap. It was another slow start, goalless at the half. Anton Saletros finally finds the back of the net with a skim off the top of his head on a cross from Philip Zinkernagel. And then St. Louis City breaks through two gaffes from the Fire defense. One that was inexcusable. The other that was just not good. Robin Ludd, unfortunately, continues to have a less than ideal start to his Fire career. And that is all she wrote, as the Fire are unable to overcome that goal deficit and force extra time.
Man, and it's look, and we'll talk more about Ludd in a second. Some of it's some of it's choices that he made and some of it, the way that he played. I mean, he did, against Montreal, basically walk onto the pitch and score a goal, which is just, I get, that's a cool thing if you can ever make that happen, right? Just be yeah, I'm here. I score. I'm on for 90 seconds. Get you a goal. It's what I'm here for. Mm-hmm. But some of it, I think, is just bad situations that he's sometimes put into, and that hasn't put him in his best light. I think the combination is just really hard for everybody involved.
Yeah, and look, well, I don't know. We're kind of talking about it. We're going to talk about it later. There is an aspect to this of he's not the guy you're supposed to worry about what situation he comes on in. MLS vet, all-time leading scorer at a different MLS club, albeit a newer-ish one. He's not the guy you should have to worry about coming on when things are not at their peak, especially with just the disparity between him and some of the other guys on the roster.
Well, there's that. And then there's also, I asked Greg about that in the press conference afterwards. And he said, look, there's not low pressure situations to Like, because he loves the Billie Jean King quote. Like ever since last year, he's been saying it off and on. Like, yeah, I am surprised that I haven't seen it at the training center somewhere. That pressure is a privilege, and like it's one of those things. Like you tell that to a high level athlete, and like they're just like, "Oh my god! Like where have these words been my whole life?" It just rings so true.
Hashtag
it's like
BTB,
finding religion. But yeah, and shout out Billie Jean King. Pretty much in any situation we can. But the other thing you mentioned is like the Fire have only beaten themselves. I've been keeping track of how long the Fire have held the lead in games, how long they have, been trailing in games. Almost half the minutes they've been trailing in 2026 happened last night when we're recording, Wednesday, whenever that was for the Open Cup game, which, now 9 league games plus 2 Open Cup games into this season, like that's a pretty good record. And they've led for about half of the minutes that they've played. Now, at the same time, if you're like, look, you will have trailed 26 minutes after 11 games played in all competitions, and how many wins, losses, and draws do you think you have? You're probably not going to say 3 losses all comps, which is the other side of that equation.
Yeah, well put. And I think it's an interesting light to put it in, right? Because look, 5-2-2 in the league. This is disappointing for, I think, a lot of reasons. We talked again. Shout out Joe Lowry and Backfield, but with everybody, it felt like we talked with preseason. The feeling behind the Fire was, probably not Supporters Shield. Once you're in MLS Cup, anything can happen. But Open Cup, they're going to be up there. It's going to be them and maybe 1 or 2 other teams kind of in that tier who should and can really go all out and end up winning that. And now
no one had the Quakes being that 1 or 2 other teams. Right. Like that'll be the top thing. But that's the world we're living in.
Don't get me started on the Quakes. Don't get me started on the Quakes. I don't want to get into this. No, but yeah, to that end, it was like you were on a collision course with the Quakes in the semifinals, right? And that's how the bracket would have shooken out. Baked out. I don't know. And to not even make it to the quarterfinals, it has to feel like a disappointment. I know just watching reactions online last night, it was a massive disappointment to a lot of the fan base. And look, I think the first thing I said, and maybe this is where we kick it off, and I think it's the main thing, was, look, this to me is the second year in a row Greg Berhalter chose not to prioritize the U.S. Open Cup, and it bit him, right? He was able to squeak by into the quarterfinals last year. This year, and like, look, that's the reaction I've gotten from everybody, which is like, oh yeah, but like, well, he started Philip Zinkernagel, he started Hugo Kuipers. Like, yeah, he also started Victor Radojevic, Dylan Borso, who I thought both played well in different facets of the game.
So you're saying that players that he rotated were not the problem? I mean, like, so here's the thing,
guys playing okay, guys playing well is not the same as your best 11. Like, he chose to play his best 11 available, right? No Jonathan Bamba, no Leo Barroso, on Saturday against the worst team in the league by a country mile.
He started Pousa Dezijan in his first MLS start, and it came in a league game, and he got more than 60 minutes. Like,
only because Pouso couldn't play on Wednesday.
You're saying that he would have played Pousa Dezijan and what, not Marin instead?
Maybe, yeah.
It's...
Okay, then do you want me to say he started 10 of his best 11 available? Are we sure
best 11 is a completely it's a complete, like, the question you have to ask is not if it was a best 11 in one particular game or another. Do you think that the squad that was on the pitch had the talent to get the win?
But again, that is not.
That's what a coach's job is to do.
We're talking about 2 separate things here, right? We can talk about the disappointment in the game because, yes, I agree 100%. That team should have won last night. That's kind of its own problem. I also think there was a way to manage this stretch of 3 games that allowed you to field the best possible team, the most rested, best available 11 players on Wednesday instead of Saturday. And he chose to do it Saturday. I don't think that's controversial. Now, you can disagree with me and say that was fine or that was the best way to handle it. I don't think I'm wrong.
I just, like, we've been saying that we wanted to see more of guys like Victor Radojevic and Dylan Borso, and then we're complaining when guys like Victor Radojevic
I'm not complaining
and Sergio Orahel. So
my point is, saying all of those guys could have played Saturday against a worse team in a game that matters less.
I think that you just have to say that you have to try to win the game in front of you. And like, I think it's that simple. And I think that in both games,
and that to me is deprioritizing.
And I also think that however not great of a team you think St. Louis is, I think that Sporting KC this year is in a different category.
That's my point.
You know, and I mean, but the question then is, did you feel the strong enough roster in both? Right. And I think the answer is yes. And it, like, again, like, you just have to play a team that you think is going to win. And I think that happened in both games. So I don't think that you can say maybe he should have played stronger players and stuff like that, but I don't think that really gets at what the real issue was here. Right. Which I guess, what is the argument then that like you would have rested Hugo more on Saturday, taken him off in like the 60th minute, 65th minute, and played him 90 on
my
Wednesday?
Here,
like, no, because that's the other thing is like, it's because it's not like it's not like a pick three and they can be in whatever order you want, right? It's like a game on Saturday, a game in the middle of the week, and a game on Saturday. Yeah. And so some guys you trust will be able to do 270 minutes. Like Brady is going to be playing and starting in all three games. I mean, God willing, unless there's an injury before Saturday, which we know is a thing that can happen to goalies now. Exactly. And, you sort of feel like any of the center backs, like there was some rotation there. I don't, like, look, Joel Waterman, I mean, saved a goal temporarily. But
trust all three of those guys.
Right, exactly. So that's like, it's Joel Waterman needs minutes to stay sharp. And like, so you started two center backs that are bound for the World Cup in an Open Cup game. Yeah, like, look, that's like fine.
I think you're mistaking what I'm saying for passing judgment. I'm not even saying this as a criticism. I am just saying it as a fact. There was a way to handle this stretch of games that prioritized the knockout competition. They did not do that. And I think that cost them.
I think you prioritize, maybe I'm looking at this differently, but I think that if MLS had said, you know what, we are going to play midweek, and this would be a discussion with CONCACAF too, because, CONCACAF Champions Cup is going on. We will do midweek match days during these weeks, and we will save that weekend for cup games. Then it would be a little bit of a different story, because again, like, if you can get basically, I think that it's not maybe going to be 90 minutes from Hugo Kuipers on Saturday. I think it's going to be like 70 or something like that. Right. Yeah. And so, but I think that if Hugo had gone 90 and you had saved him some of the Saturday before, I think you end up with fewer minutes with Hugo Kuipers on the pitch out of the three matches. And so I think to a certain extent, it's not so much a coach saying, I'm not going to prioritize that. Although, like, you can deprioritize league games. I think it's saying that the schedule, the way that it's lined up, deprioritizes it by putting this Open Cup game dead smack in the middle between the two league games.
Yeah, look, the point here is that by trying to win all three games equally, you are naturally deprioritizing the knockout competition. That's my point.
I mean,
right? Like,
I think that you're deprioritizing the one in the middle to some extent, and I think that just is going to be the case, even if it was a league game, right? Yeah, and I think that's what's going on.
I guess, but like at that point, we're just talking hypotheticals, and like, come on, like, look, we have to talk about what actually happened and what's in front of us. Like, again, I think you could disagree with me that it's a bad thing. I'm not even necessarily trying to say it is, but like, I think that's what happened. We saw the same thing last year, right? You saw Omar Gonzalez and you saw Omar Gonzalez start a game. You saw Jonathan Bamba on the bench. You saw Jay Davila, who at the time was not the guy who we think he is now, starting a game. Like, this happened against
the number of either center back, like World Cup veteran or World Cup aspiring soon to be center backs that are in this conversation, and the spectrum of experiences they've had in the Open Cup is just wild. Oh man.
No, look, I think I saw a lot of sentiment last night of frustration from fans who wanted Greg Berhalter to take this cup more seriously than the league's game surrounding it. And my point is, for the second year in a row, he chose not to do that. That is a deliberate choice. Now, you can think it was the right one, and I think that's a fair belief. But that's what happened, and I do think that's part of why the Fire lost. I think if you have Andrew Gutman, Jonathan Dean, Jay Davila on the field for 90 minutes, I think there's a pretty good chance the Fire win that game. Not 90 minutes, but starting, playing majority.
this may just be my opinion on this. I think that Maury and Sergio combined, like I think that the two of them did. I think that the midfield was probably a positive in terms of getting at the thing that the Fire didn't get enough of in this game, rather than a drag.
Right until Anton Saletros came off, and then it kind of felt like it collapsed.
So yeah, I think that I think is the biggest criticism, which is so funny because the thing that, you said a lot that I think is a fair criticism of Greg is like he waits too long to do subs. And I think we see subs in the 64th minute for like subs for the first time before the 75th minute that were like not predetermined, like forced on him by an injury. Yeah. And then moments later, the team concedes. And it's just like, dude, it's like we want to see more Dylan Borso. We want to see more Victor Radojevic. We want to see like all the things that we're asking for. It's like, okay, I'll give that to you.
Look,
we did, ironically, we've been saying that we wanted to see more Marin. We've seen 180 minutes of Marin. And now I'm like, well, are we going to get 270 minutes of Marin Haile Selassie over the course of 8 days? Because that is a lot for a guy that plays the way he plays.
No, and that's the other side of the coin too, right? You could tell by the time the 70th minute rolled around, Phil, Marin, I think they were pretty gassed. And the effort was still there, but they didn't have the motor. They didn't quite have the legs. And look, ultimately, I think there's two big things I want to talk about here. One, we've alluded to Robin Lod. This has been a poor start. And you made the comment before, like, oh, is Puso Di Tejano the best 11? With the way Robin Lod has been playing, maybe? Like,
well, I don't think that that's true. I mean, honestly, like, and you know this too, but like if Bomba's back, which I don't know if we're just skipping all over the place, if Bomba's back, then I think that he's not, but then it's, who's next off the bench. And I mean, I don't know. Especially because one of the things you think you're getting with Robin Lod and not with a guy who's in his first year in the league and is very young is he's not going to cost you with mistakes. And that's not what happened in the Leagues Cup, right? Yeah. Now, having said that, we didn't even talk about the play to the goal. Like, we're just all over the place today. I don't know. Sorry, this may be like more just like vibesy all over the place than normal, but I don't know about you, but I'm still a little bit cold from SeatGeek and kind of tired from the 24 hours. But it's in that goal, like the Fire's first goal against, it comes after the Fire are trying to play out of the back. Mboazi has it. And this was the second or third time that we'd seen that night where it's like Brady will, kicked it short to Mboazi, who just stood on the ball for a while. I think waiting for a press that just wasn't going to come. And then it's Mboazi sends it back to Brady, and then he, tries playing it out from there. In this case, to Robin Lod, who it's just not great passing. And I mean, I hate to blame the pitch conditions because the pitch is the same for everybody, but like the way the Fire were trying to use the pitch is frankly not the way that SeatGeek's pitch can be used these days. And this, I think, frustrated the Fire a lot because it is not well-maintained grass in the same way. Like it looked long looking at it up close, like talking to a couple players afterwards, like it played long, and so that's just not that's not good conditions for getting, precise passing and the stuff that you want to be doing building out of the back. And that makes it easy for something to go wrong when you're passing in a pressure situation, which is the game of soccer. And that's what happened here. So I'm not blaming the pitch for it because those were choices that people made. And Robin Lod may have been new to the conditions at SeatGeek Stadium, but I mean, it's like other guys had been playing for 65 minutes on it and should have been making the adjustments by then.
Look, you don't ever want to pile anything on one precise moment, but it did feel like both those goals came on kind of gaffes. The first or the second, I should say, being Victor Radojevic has to shift to right back, which was kind of an interesting choice in and of itself. Kind of immediately loses his positioning, gets burned going back, creates that space, and that ultimately leads to what I believe was the winner, if I'm remembering my times correctly. Apologies, I should have it in front of me. Yeah,
that was the winner. Of the two goals, that was Edward Lovins. He wasn't. Yeah. He had maybe just come on for the first one.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I didn't realize it in the moment when I saw after the game that it was Edward Lovin who had scored. I did get a little bit of an angry, warm and fuzzy. You know what I mean? Like I was like, good for him. You know, he's just returned to action in the last few weeks. It's.
Yeah. After missing most of the past 2 years with his wife's illness, for those that, have not heard, and she passed away, which is really tragic. So it's, at least in my life, like one of the things that sports has really done is it's provided some easy structure when really difficult things in actual life are going on. And it just gives you this self-contained, like it's 90 minutes. The game is going to be 90 minutes. There's, going to be a result at the end of it. Like maybe you can do something, maybe you can't. Like when I was younger, it was like being able to do that, at a much, much, much lower level as a player with different sports. And, and even just like being able to watch it, like having like, being able to circle on your calendar Saturday night, I'm going to be watching this game, can really provide a lifeboat in difficult times. And like, look, it's good to see him playing that well. So like, if there was going to be a dagger from a St. Louis player, like that's probably the guy you would choose to put it into you if that was a thing you were going to do.
Yeah. Look, let's shift our focus a little bit. And the question I kind of want to throw to you, because this was another takeaway I had after last night. Look, you bow out in the round of 16. Nobody likes that. Nobody wanted that. Probably no matter how you feel about it. I'm curious, Tim, does this change how you view the results in the league from here on out? Because I think, early in the year, we both felt like, hey, look, if you can be third in the East, that's fantastic. That's probably your ceiling. Unofficial friend of the show, Matt Doyle, was on Soccer Wise this week talking about Chicago Fire as a potential dark horse Shield contender, right? Which there's some credit, there's some, credence to that, right? Haven't been fully healthy, still waiting to get Andre Franco back. You expect more moves in the summer.
Yep.
Does this change how you look at what the rest of the league year looks like?
Not really. I mean, to the extent that like there would have been one more, like the quarterfinal round would have happened before the World Cup break, and then, I think the way that I've been looking at it is it's almost a continuum of results, and we've kind of seen similar things, right? Like I asked Greg about this as well, where it's like past 2 games, the Fire have had, it feels like, control of the game for the first half, and they've been pretty dominant. And they haven't, not only have they not gotten a goal, they haven't, I guess technically gotten a shot on target, right? And like this is a radically different conversation if Hugo Kuiper's shot off the post early is a shot like a couple inches to his left and is a shot in the goal. Because I think then, it changes the game for St. Louis. They've got to start stretching more and like they get uncomfortable, and it's probably, not 5-0 like the game against Kansas City, but like it just probably would have been a different game, right? But at the same time, a shot off the post is not a shot on target because it didn't go in the net. And so it's 2 games in a row where the Fire were not able to get a shot on target in the first half, despite having the lion's share of the pressure, a lion's share of the possession, and playing a lot of ball in the opponent's half and the opponent's final third. And I think that has been an issue of like, how do you translate we are hanging out, like we are establishing residence in the opponent's final third, and turn that into goals on a consistent basis? Because once the faucet turns on, it frequently turns on enough to get a win. But somehow cranking the faucet hasn't always felt like it's enough to get the water to flow out,
Yeah. Well, and I think the one thing that was interesting coming into this game, I think I talked about it a little bit in the preview. The stats kind of show Roman Berkey not having the year you would hope for him, not having the year we've come to expect from him, especially as I believe he's still on a designated player contract. And one thing he's done really poorly is play the ball in the air. He has not been great in terms of claiming the ball, in terms of clearing the ball out with his hands in the air. Like it's just not been his strength. And I think you saw the Fire recognize that early. Victor Radojevic probably sent in 5 or 6 crosses in the first half that reasonably could have been finished. The Fire kind of just lack that guy who can go up and get it, right? And that is kind of the one big hole in Hugo Kuiper's game. Jack Elliott has been a target on a lot of those. We've seen Jay Davila do it on occasion. And it's interesting to see like, hey, we may not be able to break this down when we get all the way into their area. Here's kind of our plan to get in there. And it just wasn't effective. Ironically, they score on that cross from Phil, but Anton was basically on the ground when he flicked it.
I don't know if it's a cross per se from that distance. I don't know, but it is off. Like, look, Anton off a header, which is not like, congratulations to the one person in the universe that had that on their bingo card.
I watched it back. He was like, he had 1 foot on the ground when he actually made contact with it. I'm not convinced if he had just let it go that it wouldn't have fallen into the net anyway.
Well, hey man, the guy got a goal. Like,
oh yeah, no, it was a great play. It was a great play.
Yeah, man. Speaking of, like, just so I did like a quick like 3 thoughts on the game, which is, even though it's like 3/5 the length of a 5 things for the most part. I mean, maybe not quite, because I don't necessarily put quite as much work into them. It somehow takes like 1/3 of the time to do, and I'm still trying to figure out that math. But one of the things is, like, did you notice? I mean, well, did you see it on the replay when you were there, John?
The replay, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the guys behind me, I think it was Leo, he pats me on the back. He goes, "Hey, did you catch the replay?" And I look up, no board. No video board.
Gone. So the old video board at SeatGeek is no more. It died probably after a very long life, I'm sure, last year. And then they put in temporary ones, which are sort of like, you've maybe have seen them at like conventions and stuff like that, depending on what you do, or like some bigger, like, shows will do it, where it's like snapped together, like kind of like like 1 to 2 square foot size things, and they become a big video board. They just didn't pay for it for this one. Yeah.
They just had the whole stadium, everybody who was working, bring in their TV from home, and then they kind of stacked them all together. It worked pretty well, all things.
No. So there was no way to see replays in the stadium. I mean, unless you were like watching on your phone. Not that this ref was
interested in looking at him, to be fair.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, the referee, like, my big thing with refs is like, did any choices they made change the outcome of the game? Like, change who would have won? And I don't think they did in this case. And did they make any decisions that just created situations where a player got hurt because of the way they were calling the game? And that didn't happen in this game. So, like, fine. But very clearly, like, this is a ref that refs a lot of USL. I think has done like 1 MLS match. And like, I'm a fan of just let them play most of the time. But there's like, let them play. And then there's like,
whatever was
going on. I get paid the same whether or not I call anything or not. I don't even care.
You could look, I think this had 0 to like a less than 1% impact on the game directly. Like, maybe you could say that style of game favored St. Louis. Yeah, he did not care. He did not care at all. It was funny. It was like, no. you could tell the one thing he didn't want to do was send someone off and change the game. Ironically, like, he probably should have sent people off from both sides. If we're being totally honest, I'm looking at you, Victor Radojevich. The one thing I will point out, I've seen a lot of hubbub about the foul on Marin in the box. I was like 15 feet away from that. That wasn't really, like, it did not look that bad in person. It looks much worse on camera.
It's like, you could maybe see that given, but look, this is one of those other things where there's no VAR at this stage of the Open Cup. And there were people in the press box that like were like thinking, "Oh, that's offside. They're going to call it offside like after, like late." I'm like, no. Like, there's no VAR here. Like, if the flag goes up, then it's offside. If the flag doesn't go up, it's not offside. Like, that's the way the rule works, unless they're playing advantage. But like,
I do wonder a little bit, like, man, I was looking at that linesman. He looked like he was 18. He's a young guy. No, look, last thing I'll say about St. Louis, then we'll talk Cincinnati. I kind of think I'm on the opposite side of you, Tim, just in terms of how this affects viewing league results, right? Just to put a bow on that one. I think what you've done is you've unfortunately, eliminated an opportunity for a trophy, which leaves 3 remaining. And I don't know how likely anybody thinks the Fire are to win Leagues Cup. So to me, it does matter a little more. I'm not expecting them to go out and win Supporters Shield. I do think they should be within striking distance of the top of the Eastern Conference. That's your sole focus now, right? Is improve your league standing as much as possible so you have the best possible path when it comes time for the playoffs. And so, yeah, if this team then goes out and finishes 6th in the East, I think that would be a massive disappointment. In a way, it wouldn't have been if they had made a run to even the semifinal or lost in the final. You know what I mean?
I still think maybe this is just me. I think a trophy is a trophy, and I think that's a separate conversation. But anything short of a trophy, just the way that the team has been playing, like they've been getting results, and it hasn't always been the most convincing, but they've been getting results. And you know what? Like, it's easy to say, oh, well, you said it hasn't been convincing. Like, that's basically the Sounders' MO all the way up until like basically the last, couple games that they make it to in whatever stage of the playoffs or whatever knockout competition you're talking about. And so I think that that's a thing that teams do, like very good teams do. And like the Fire, like you said, John, like they're going to be making changes in the summer. They're going to be trying to make the squad better. They're getting Franco back, and they've been figuring stuff out. Like they've been getting more offensively than they were earlier in the season. It hasn't always been perfect, but that's what happens when you're figuring things out. So like, I think that 6th in the East would be equally disappointing if the Fire had made a semifinal in the Open Cup or not at this stage. Like I would say that that's just a disappointing result, and I wouldn't look at like being 4th in the East or 3rd in the East any differently based on anything shy of a trophy, right? Like a trophy is just like at that point you won a trophy that year, like your year's a success.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, look, fair is fair. Reasonable minds can disagree. Let's talk a little bit of Cincinnati. It's weird to be coming back to the trough, so to speak. The Fire just faced off against Cincinnati 2 weeks ago.
Is that what we're calling? If one of the stadiums the Fire are playing in this week is the trough, it's not Soldier Field.
Look, Chicago Fire and FC Cincinnati in Soldier Field on Saturday. They surrendered that late lead to get 1 point at TQL Stadium. Just to refresh your memory, Hugo Kuipers bagged a brace off a couple of volleys. Philip Zinkernagel took the penalty to ultimately get the Fire to 3. Some late game shenanigans. Evander drawing about 8 million penalties, or fouls, I should say, not necessarily penalties, although there was one. Led plus an own goal from Jay Davila, led FC Cincinnati back into the game to claim a point when they should have reasonably gone home empty-handed. Tim, I think the biggest difference from game 1 to game 2, the Fire hoping to have Jonathan Bamba back, but the other side of the ball I think matters a little more. Kevin Denke will be back for FC Cincinnati on Saturday as it stands. He scored 3 goals in the last 2 games since returning from suspension. The 1-game suspension he served against the Fire for getting a red card. Hey, look, he's a dangerous man. We've seen him give the Fire trouble in the past. Evander is still kind of having a sleepy year by Evander standards, but he is
started to wake up against the Fire for whatever that's worth. Like first goal of the season.
Yeah. And then he did score a penalty late against Red Bull. No goal contributions since then. I'm curious. Yeah, I would love to get big picture, your outlook on this. Denke back, FC Cincinnati still missing some center backs, but it's a little bit of a toss up in terms of what this team is going to look like on Saturday.
I feel like the Fire should still think this is a game they absolutely can win. Is what it comes down to, right? And I think this becomes a real challenge for the squad because it was almost exactly a year ago that was that 7-2 loss to Nashville. And ironically, I think that became the point when the Fire season turned around. Like they left that game and things started getting better. The next game was it was kind of one step forward, one step back because Brady had that red card. It became a 0-0 draw. But the fact that you get a point when your goalie leaves like less than a half an hour in with the red is something. I mean, like that's something, right? And then after that, the Fire strung together some wins. And I think that getting kicked out of a cup competition against a team that you rightfully, I think, should feel that you should have beaten could be that wake-up call this year if the Fire want it to be. And if it is, then it starts with a win against Cincinnati. Like, I know Kevin Denke's back. I know he's good. They're still going to be missing a bunch of center backs, and they play a bunch of center backs. And I honestly, like, even if Miles Robinson and Matt Miazga are both back, which I'm not 100% sure is going to be the case, the Matt Miazga that you're seeing in 2026 does not look like the Matt Miazga that everyone was afraid to face a couple of years ago, which is sort of sad because I think it's related more to an injury than a natural decline. And I think Miles Robinson maybe had a little bit of a glow up at the right point in his career and is maybe not as good as people think that he is, especially for the way that FCC want to play, which is like, let's get the ball long to Evander, and then, Evander and Thenke will create some magic for us. Like Miles Robinson, you see, like his idea of a forward pass seems to be you hit it at about a 15-degree slant compared to like his own goal line. Like and like you just need more than that for the way that they want to play. And I think that's part of like teams have figured that out. And I think that that's part of why like FC Cincinnati have been struggling this season.
Yeah. No, look, I mean, just as a thought, right? We do see the Fire right now, I think, on tired legs. I mean, like you say, Cincinnati not having the best start to their year. We'll just say that. Currently sitting on 12 points. I mean, look, they're only 5 points behind the Fire. They've scored more goals than the Fire. They've just also allowed 15 more goals than the Fire have. Fire's still under 10 goals allowed in league play, which is kind of impressive in a lot of ways. Look, I think I am a little bit worried about what the Fire will look like in terms of the attack and just in terms of like how fresh the legs are. Jonathan Bamba should be good. Pouso Ditejan will be available in this game, obviously, after he was just serving a suspension in the Open Cup, so no reason he won't be available. But Martin Haile Selassie...
Well, he would have served it either way. He's available for next year's Open Cup, so he can, if he's not with the Fire, he can just sign with Des Moines Menace go there.
Okay, all right. Let's not... If I have to see Pouso Ditejan play for Des Moines Menace, I might. Although, shout out Coach Charlie Latmore, who's still out there. OG Riverlight coach.
I asked somebody about this. I don't have an answer. If like the Fire somehow tried to, I don't think that there's a way that this realistically could happen, but you never know because the rules between MLS Next Pro and MLS seem to be not what is written down. If they could have made Omar Gonzalez eligible for this game, so we would have served that one suspension, so that next year he could potentially play for Des Moines Menace when he's coaching Fire 2 or whatever.
Look, we keep talking about center backs.
Player.
We keep talking about center backs. The angle we haven't talked about here, it's the team that will play their 17-year-old center back against the team that won't play their 17-year-old center back. No. Look, I think the key I put in here, I'm still trying to make this happen. Can the Bash brothers, trademark, meaning Jay Davila and Bazeli and Boaze, can they shut down Evander and Thenke?
Dude. Right? One of those guys has the build you'd expect of a guy called the Bash Brothers. The other guy, most certainly.
Yeah, but it's because they're friends, Tim. Gosh, come on, keep up. No, look, it's you look at what Jay did really well.
It's like a buddy. I'm imagining a buddy comedy, and it's like he's the guy that shows up later, like applies to the job, and it's like the music stops playing, and you're like, you think you're a Bash Brother with Jay?
Have you not seen Mighty Ducks 2?
I've seen Mighty Ducks 2.
Okay, if you guys haven't seen Mighty Ducks 2, I think if you look up Bash Brothers Mighty Ducks 2, it's like the two kids with the long hair. They're wearing bandanas. They're listening to metal music in their bed. Like that's what I picture them doing. Although I think the cultural setting is different, obviously.
Which of those things do you think?
Well, I just said the cultural setting is different. No, look, but what it is two really talented, physically dominating players. And they both have shown the ability to play comfortably in a one-on-one. Jay Davila did handle Evander for large chunks of that first game. We've seen Boazi play a similar role defensively. And I wonder how much of this will be, we saw Greg Berhalter at times last year say, Carlos Terán, you're taking Lionel Messi out of this game, right? That's your whole job. That's all we want you to do. And it was effective. So that's fits kind of
right in. Short Argentinian fits right in Carlos Duran's pocket. Just slides in.
Well, hey, to be fair, Wilfred Zaha fit right into Jonathan Dean's pocket. That happened too. Luis Muriel also fit in there. A lot of guys fit. Now that I'm thinking about it. No, but I think that is kind of the matchup I'm keyed in on. If you can slow those guys down, to your point, if you can just cut off that connection from front to back, I think the Fire should have a pretty easy handle on this game. I think the question is, how do you avoid the slip up and falling back into where you were, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's also just the mentality of like switching off what happened on Wednesday and maybe using a little bit of it, right, to like dig a little bit deeper if your legs are tired. Although, look, like the gap between MLS and the top teams in Europe is shrinking in a lot of ways, but one of the ways it's shrinking is facilities. And in the top teams in Europe, those guys play 90 minutes one day, you know what I mean, or lengthy stretches on the weekend, midweek, and then lengthy stretches the next weekend, and then go from there. And like all of the Fire players have access to the same or better facilities in terms of recovery and in terms of all of that than anyone that is, playing in the Champions League.
Look,
so
we hype up a lot of what like the infrastructure of the club has. There's a not unreasonable argument that the training center is among the best in the world.
Yeah, let's put it this way. There's Premier League teams that have toured the training center that have not just ones that are like just in and, the ones that have recently spent significant money overhauling their training facilities, and they're jealous of some of the equipment and some of the tools that the Fire have at their disposal. And there's other things where it's you got the model for that. Like we wanted that one, but we couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
So that's the level we're talking about. But it's just, and the staff are there and all that. Like there's like some teams where there's like one guy that is there capable of, giving massages. It's a much more built out staff than MLS teams were even a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And so all of that is like, the expectations of players playing a bunch of minutes, multiple games in a week is increasingly realistic, and it's a commonplace in Europe, and it's I think it's going to be seen as more commonplace here.
And this is also the reality if you want to be considered a top team in MLS, right? The reality is you want to compete in CONCACAF Champions, like you'll be playing midweek games for a good chunk of the early season, right?
You tell that to Mark Dos Santos.
Yeah, he's very angry. Yes,
who's complaining that this team has to play on the weekend?
Brother, I don't know how to tell you this. If you don't want to play anymore, just lose, and you'll be done. That's how that works.
They didn't get that memo on Wednesday, so yeah, thankfully.
Well, the Fire also they have the benefit of they've been at home, right? They've played all three of these games, not in Soldier Field necessarily, but in Chicago. Nobody had to travel. That is a benefit. These guys were in
Chicagoland.
Yeah, Chicagoland. I don't even know if I want to call Bridgeview Chicagoland. God. No, but so there is that added benefit there. I'm curious what Philip Zinkernagel and Marin Haile-Selassie looks like. I trust Hugo Kuiper's motor. I think he is just, maybe I'm being overly optimistic. He's just on a different level. I think he also is on a shorter run of games than the rest of these guys. I worry about Marin. I worry about Phil. The benefit of Jonathan Bamba being back, and it wasn't for injury. He was just out with we still don't know what, some kind of personal reason. I think is big. And look, I liked what I saw from Pouso di Dijon. And he is naturally, he is a naturally right-footed player. So like,
I don't necessarily think that I would be ready to throw him in week after week for starting if I'm Greg.
No, but I mean to say if he needs to play 35 minutes, I'll feel okay about that.
I think he can do that. And I think depending on the situation, if it looks like it's a guy that is getting gas that's coming off, then I think you could do that and not only say he's going to tread water, but maybe he could give us that a tiny step forward from what we had when we took the other guy off.
100%. You do get the added benefit of Jonathan Dean being in. He wasn't even selected on Wednesday night, so he'll be fully rested and ready to goal. Just in terms of like a defensive stopgap. Although, yeah, I was always impressed with Dylan Borso. I'm curious to see if he ends up getting some rung at that more forward position, because we've seen him do some there too. Tim, I think that might be kind of where we go to our question here. That being the question that we ask when questions are determined because they need answers. And so, Tim, I'll just ask you the question. Trademark. Who's your spark on Saturday, and who you got?
Let's say Joe Bamba. I mean, assuming he's back, which I think he will be. He has looked good this year, and hopefully, whatever the personal issue was that kept him out, the conversation we just had about soccer, if it can be something that can help, sport can help you focus, and it can be that relief. And there's nothing that feels quite as good as scoring a couple goals or getting a couple assists that change the fortune of your team.
Yeah, well put. And who you got?
I'm going to say 2-1 for the Fire. I think that it's going to be chillier. Cincinnati's a little bit warmer than it is. It was chilly already. And honestly, just getting a win against Cincinnati, we talked about them not being in the best of form, but that's still, I think, will feel like a step forward for the program, especially considering the result 2 weeks ago in Cincinnati.
Yeah, no, well put. Look, I like Andrew Gutman in this game. I think one of the things I talked about the last time they played was the Fire have this ability to just get so wide across that back line, and I think even with a back three, I think
Shaqiri wide.
Yeah, like as wide Shaqiri. Yeah. No, like they do have the ability to go 6 across there, right? And so I think Andrew Gutman could be a real key just in terms of really stretching the Cincinnati defense wide, creating space inside for a guy like Hugo Kuipers to finish. I think you're going to need to count on a guy like him because I think Marin and Phil may not quite have their legs fully under them. Hopefully they do. Hopefully, if Robin Lode and Poussou Tejan get time, they both play well. I kind of landed on a draw here. I'm going to go 2-2. I think it's been a lot of minutes for the most important players. And I think the Fire can win this game. I just think there's a reasonable chance that Kevin Denke is Kevin Denke. And, look, Mbazeli and Boazi, Tim, we texted during the game, or I texted you during the game. We talked about it after. He got beat by Sebastian Cordova. Yep. And then he made a great recovery. Do not get me wrong. He had no reason to come off his line or come off his angle. He did by about 6 feet, managed to get all the way back over. Kevin Denke doesn't let you recover on that, if that makes sense.
And we've seen this, not to get into this because we're already running long, but he was out of position in the first place. Then he gets beat. And then the thing is, he's got the athleticism to recover. And that's what he did there. And that gives you the highlight reel, but you don't see the thing before the highlight reel that led to it. And you're right. Like you can do that against a lot of guys, even a lot of starting guys in MLS that are pretty good. Like Kevin Denke, you can't do it against. And there's some other guy like Timo Werner. You're not going to be able to do it against if that becomes a situation. It's not, there's guys that just will not let you do that against them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not, I don't mean to say he's going to allow 2 goals all by himself, right? The same goes for anybody, right? If you're out of position, Denke and Evander are both guys who can make you pay for it. So that's kind of the thought process there. I'll be rooting for a win. I'll be hoping for a win, but I think that is ultimately just where we land. As we wrap up here, thanks so much again for tuning in. I want to draw attention to it again. We talked about it a few weeks ago. There is still, if you go to savethecaps.com, you can sign a petition urging local governments in Vancouver and also MLS to step in and make sure that the Vancouver Whitecaps stay in Vancouver. There was new reporting this week that alludes to the fact that the most likely potential ownership group at this stage, at least, would be moving them to Las Vegas. And I don't think anybody wants that. It would be losing a good piece of MLS history, a good piece of the legacy of the league. And it would also be,
North American soccer history too, right? Predating MLS by 20 years.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say is you're also decimating a pipeline for the entire western part of Canada, which, look, I know I like to root against Canada when they play the United States. I still don't want that to happen. So I would recommend going to the website. You can read more about it. You can sign the petition. You can get involved. Use hashtag #SaveTheCaps as well. Little things like that do go a long way, and hopefully that will change the outcome that I've not seen a single person say would be a good thing. I guess except maybe the city of Las Vegas, but who cares what Las Vegas wants? Anyway, look, thanks again for tuning in. We always appreciate you giving us a little bit of your time and a little bit of your attention. Apologies on being a day late here, but that's what happens when the team plays on the day we're supposed to record on. As always, you can stay tuned to menofred97.com. That's where you'll find all the latest news, articles, analysis, opinions, anything and everything that has to do with Chicago Fire FC, not the fire department. That's where you'll find it. You can also stay tuned to social media, menofred97 anywhere. Excuse me, God. menofred97 anywhere and everywhere that matters. We'll keep you updated, keep you covered, and maybe drop a pun or two along the way. And wherever you're listening to this, if you go ahead and give it a like, a rate, a subscribe, a share, tell your cousin, the one you used to talk to a lot when you were younger, but you don't really talk to anymore. Text them, be like, hey, I was listening to this. Maybe you'd enjoy it too. You never know. Maybe they will. And now you've reconnected with a family member that you don't talk to a lot. I say that to say, please share. It does go a long way. But I'm rambling at this point. Thank you so much for being here and joining us around the bonfire. For Tim, for our illustrious producer Austin, we appreciate you having you, and come on, you better bet.